Okay, Richard Lee, 2 minutes apiece.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Licata. It's now mid-July, and I've been addressing concerns to you in writing and in these sessions for the last 5 months on the subject of the scandal, particularly the details that have emerged in the last year surrounding official corruption in the Seattle Police Department and other government agencies in the death of Kurt Cobain. And to date, what I've heard from you and your staff is that you're taking a meeting with Seattle Police Department Chief Gil Kurlikowski soon. It's usually phrased as next week. So when do you think that meeting might be occurring?
Richard, we did have a meeting. I did bring up your concerns regarding the Kurt Cobain incident and
death investigation or non-investigation?
The police chief's position is that that case has now been closed. I appreciate the volume of information you produced, and the police chief and I both looked at it. I'm not an attorney. He was impressed, but there is still no evidence there to open up the case. If you have a complaint regarding the actual conduct of the police, then I would recommend that you can file a complaint with the Office of Professional Accountability.
You must be kidding. I mean, haven't you heard any of what I've said to you the last several months? The Office of Professional Accountability is oblivious to this matter because their conduct in this case has been disgraceful. And as far as you're coming here and saying that the police chief has reviewed these materials, or did you use the phrase looked at the materials? Well, that's the first I've heard of this, because up until 1 minute ago, there's been a blanket layer of deniability that Chief Kurlikowski has ever looked at any of those materials. And now you're deferring to him as the ultimate authority on these materials. I'm not particularly confident that what you just said really signifies the police chief looking at the evidence in this case that demonstrates that there needs to be a legitimate homicide investigation and an inquest into this case. What level of confidence do you have that he actually read these materials?
Well, Richard, I appreciate you speaking here this morning. Your time is up, and if you do want to pursue this, your course of action are either to work through this.
But sir, could you answer the question, what degree of confidence do you actually have that this ultimate authority to whom you're deferring all of the responsibility has actually even read the material? Because I'm telling you, up until a couple of minutes ago, there was a complete denial that he had ever seen these materials.
Well, all I can say is that I've been told by the police chief that this case is closed, and
Did he tell you that he read the materials?
I do know he looked at them, and that's all I know.
Looked at, sir.
But thank you very much for coming this morning and
It's the afternoon,
expressing your concern about this situation. We will have to move on to the next speaker.
You know, when this occurred in 1999, when the original Cameron Davis scandal occurred, there were open hearings in Seattle City Council where the police chief came to the City Council and was videotaped being questioned by council members on the Cameron Davis scandal. Now, this is a second Cameron Davis scandal, and even a bigger one. And, you delayed this for 5 months, and now you're saying, well, I had some kind of a conversation in which he conveyed some kind of vague information for me, case closed.
Thank you. We should, the next person, please.
What is the likelihood of having open hearings?
Thank you.
None at all. That's what I'm hearing.
Anwar, peace.
There goes Clark. Heard those feet coming up the stairs. I said, yeah, I bet you that's Clark. Clark's here to talk about the OPA and such stuff. But what you got there today is you got, first of all, we got an absence of Officer Fernando, or Fernandez, or whatever his name is, from Olympic Security. That's a big freaking change. And, the counsel's in there, or some highly abbreviated form of the counsel. Mr. Steinbrück and Mr. Licata are in there hearing the Seattle Police Department committee on getting video cameras into the cars. And apparently they're going to have, I think they said 98 out of 225 patrol cars are going to have nifty video cameras installed. And this should make for some pretty exciting stuff in terms of providing the media with what they want, which is some nifty free videotape to exploit on the evening news. And only a couple of days ago, I think it was in Florida, there was a dashboard cam for a patrol car that videotaped a meteorite streaking down to Earth in a brilliant fireball. So these police cameras make for great TV. I mean, not individually, but on the 1 in a million shot that they capture something good. It's all free, and it'll all be exploited by the commercial networks and their affiliates, of course. And honestly, it's not like my mind is drifting from the real purpose of our visit here today, which was no surprise at all. I mean, the guy didn't specify when the meeting occurred, how long it occurred, how much information was exchanged. He gave us a vague statement that the chief had looked at it, which is a nothing statement. I mean, when he said previously that he had looked at the materials, at least I was talking about having read the materials, and he chimed in, oh, I've looked at it. Oh, yes, I have. And I picked up on his usage of the term look at it, and believe me, it raised doubt. No doubt it raised doubt. And then we come back, and now we got him reporting in a highly insubstantial way that he's sure that the police chief looked at it, like what, he walked into the meeting and he had it on the top of the stack of his papers and upside down, and from 6 feet away the police chief looked at it. Did he even hold it up? Did he hold on under his nose and say? And by the way, this thing, which is getting pretty dog-eared, is exactly what it looks like. It's getting kind of tattered because I've been carrying this copy around, but this is an exact copy of the letters that went out to the various principals involved in exactly the same type of binder and all that, and all the voluminous pages. And it's not as difficult to get through as you might think, because all the Kata has to do is to look at the 2 pages addressed to him. February 3rd, that's February, March, April, May, June, July. So February 3rd, yeah, okay, so it's been 6 months. All of February, all of March, all of April, all of May, all of June, and half of, almost a week of July. So about 5.25 months, right? And now he's been telling us and told us on June 15th when we were here, in fact, that meeting is going to occur with the police chief next week. This is his monthly meeting. It took them over 5 months to get around to their monthly meeting. Now, if we were going to be cynical about this, and believe me, we're not far off the definitive point of view of cynicism, we'd say he was cutting a fucking deal for himself, I mean, you can also say it was just a delay, he doesn't want to deal with it, whatever, but, in any other context, other than doe-eyed Seattle, people would say, oh, well, he must have been busy getting something for himself in this whole deal. And I would have no way of specifying precisely what that is, and as we know, Seattle politicians and such are so dumb that they sometimes sort of make a deal on vague promises, to all appearances. Like just a vague promise that I'll be your good buddy, We're on good terms. Well, why the hell should anybody be on good terms in this whole affair? You know, I mean, just read the only document that they've generated. And by the way, I looked in my post office box about 2 hours ago, and they have not mailed me anything. And frankly, given the guy's attitude today, I'm not expecting to be mailed anything by Licata. You know, the case is closed. The case is closed. Well, you know, what the hell is that supposed to mean? There's no such thing as a closed murder case. There are closed murder cases by definition, but that doesn't mean that when new evidence arises, it's just ignored. And I'm not talking about insubstantial, partial new evidence. I'm talking about revelatory new evidence of, you know, members of the investigation team mutilating the body for fun and profit, and especially for profit at the funeral home. That's not going to prompt a further investigation? There's never, other than a confession of the murderers having done it, there's no other more persuasive case for opening a new investigation, is there? Videotaped evidence of the investigatory team mutilating and robbing the body at the funeral home, according to the decedent's wife, in a 1,200-word published statement, 1,221 words. And then I get this shit back from them, does not contain any concrete or verifiable facts. And then Nikki Licata's going to sit there and say, well, you know, I've brought this to the attention of the chief, but blah, blah, blah. If you want to take it, you can make a complaint to the OPA. Well, what the hell have I been telling you for the last 5 months? The OPA is, you know, the blind and retarded and crippled leading the blind here. Emphasis on retarded. Although, you know, retardation is being claimed by a lot of people in this case because, you know, Nick Licata and his I looked at it jazz is now looking a hell of a lot like he just looked at it without reading it. Because all he has to do is look at the 2 pages that are involved. Right? Attached you will find 57 pages of documents, the most recent phase of this situation, wherein incontrovertible evidence of official corruption has surfaced yet again, this time in the form of an online confession by Cobain's widow that she helped suppress the public and police knowledge of the criminal mutilation and looting of Cobain's body by certain individuals, including at least one member of the official investigatory team from the King County Medical Examiner's office. And, you know, the 57 pages, of course, includes that 1,221-word statement, published. A published confession, essentially, that she helped cover this up. These crimes are known to have been examined by the widow and a lawyer for the funeral home in horrific videotape evidence. It's 2 pages. His bit is 2 pages. Did he ever admit to reading the 2 pages? No. And the initial dilatory period, which was February and March leading up to mid-April when these crimes occurred in 1994, allowed enough time to lapse so that they were unable to initiate an investigation based on the 10-year time frame for an official corruption investigation in the state of Washington. So, you know, is Nick Licata just some poor schmuck who's caught between a rock and a hard place and he didn't get around to reading the material in time and oh darn these things happen? Bullshit. That's not the way I look at it, and no reasonable person would look at it that way. What's going on is there were 2.5 months for him to put a phone call in or take a meeting with the chief of police and say, holy shit, this is far worse than we have ever heard. You'd better do something about this because this is both of us whose desk this comes across. Regardless of whether he's willing to, you know, commit a single word to paper. Either of them, by the way. Now the guys who are killing this investigation, Art Kurlikowski, did not commit one word of anything to paper, and Licata, as of yet, has not committed one word to paper. So he just wants to be the invisible man on this. We don't know exactly where he stands because I came to city council half a dozen times and he mumbled through it every time. And today he's killing it off and saying nothing more substantial than the case is closed. The chief of police looked at it. And you get my point. He's deferring to the wisdom of someone who up until, this meeting today has always thoroughly denied, from the very moment those materials arrived across the street. We've got videotape of my attempting to deliver one packet of material to go to Captain Evenson at IIS and one packet of information to go to Chief Kurlikowski. And to all appearances, the person at the front desk had been briefed that these things were on the way, because I had told Evenson that they would be, essentially that very day. And she said, no, you need to take this over to the Alaska building, not here. And I said, no, this one needs to go to the chief of police, and I've been told that this is the appropriate place to deliver it for Evenson anyway. And then there was a lot of, labor put into explaining to me that I did something incorrect by attempting to deliver something to the chief of police, whose office then relayed the second copy to Evenson for no particular reason at all, right? That they would admit, except that obviously they had to get it out of the chief's office so that there was no possibility his, chief executive eyes could ever gaze on the horrific document. And now the whole thing is being closed because he's looked at it? Looked at it? Did he read it? No. Does he understand that the investigatory team was videotaped in the robbery phase or one of the robbery phases of the murder crime? Well, you wouldn't get that impression just from looking at the blue binder, would you? You'd actually have to get down to reading those words on the page, wouldn't you? That's the only way of doing it. Actually deciphering what these words mean, which to any literate person should be perfectly obvious. Literacy being a pretty big issue these days. I noticed the governor is on Comedy Central, that the ads are running on Comedy Central for the governor's summer reading program. The governor's summer reading program, where he is encouraging the youth of America, or at least of this great state of Washington, to understand that reading is really the key to everything. I've got to get a copy of this on tape. I don't have it on VHS yet, but it was on channel 60, so hopefully I can capture it. But hi, I'm Governor Gary Locke. Let me tell you, literacy is the most important thing for our kids. Reading is really everything, kids. And that's why I want you to, put down the baseball glove and the baseball bat this summer and really hit the books, kids. That's what made me what I am today. Except as you've seen, you can chase that sucker down the street and there's a total deniability, literally a deniability of his ability to read anything. No, I don't have my glasses. Well, I've seen the guy wearing glasses, and as far as I can tell, he's farsighted. I've never noticed that those are bifocals. But in any case, I offered and did begin to read the materials to him. And of course, really the only substantial thing he said is, you need to bring this up with the police department. Didn't specify which police department, because that gets pretty fucking nasty too, doesn't it? Is it supposed to be, the investigatory agencies of King County or Seattle? We know that they both screwed it up. And we know that members of both agencies are implicated in terms of that joint investigation team having people involved in that horrific mutilation and grave robbing series of crimes that occurred on videotape. So what police he means, I don't know. Although apparently he's denying that he was the King County executive at the time. I mean, this is no laughing matter, obviously, but when you get the governor denying that he was the King County executive at the time, this is on his website. He claims that he was the King County executive in 1993. In 1993, Gary was the King County executive. This is his official biography, which I imagine he wrote every word of, And it says that he worked for years as a King County prosecutor for several years, and then when it gets to the King County executive part, Gary was the King County executive in 1993. I mean, everyone knows the most famous year in Seattle history in recent years is 1994, because that's the famous date in R&R history, not just our history, but R&R, rock and roll, 1994. So anybody who looks at that webpage and go, oh, well, he wasn't even the King County executive. I guess any complaints about him and his conduct while King County executive are so insubstantial as to add up to absolutely nothing. And this is the binder that I chased him down in 1996 with and 1994. Well, he sure as fuck was the King County executive, and he sure as fuck was up to his earlobes in this particular case. I fully concur with Ms. Stewart-Johnson's position that the King County Medical Examiner Division came to the correct conclusions regarding Mr. Cobain's cause of death. No further investigation or inquest by the county is anticipated. I appreciate taking the time to express your views. And this is what Locke doesn't want. Locke doesn't want a single page of something that will live forever, which is why he's attempting just to mumble through this, over the course of more than 5 months, mumble through it without committing anything substantial to print, which is still a powerful medium, a powerful media in this sort of legalistic transaction. But the funny thing is that, of course, as I have explained, and as we probably should just underline for a third or fourth time here, the fact is that when Gary Locke got into his limo on the in front of FX McCrory's in the first week of November of 1996, as he was dashing off to be elected governor only 2 or 3 days later, his last words were, I haven't seen her letter. I haven't seen her letter, but of course the irony, and in case I convoluted this at all, understand that this is his October 3rd, 1995 letter referring to something that was 9 months prior, the January 17th letter, and also the April 25th letter of that year. And in that letter she explains the extremely contradictory nature of Cobain's wounds, not having the head suffer massive destruction, and at the same time the weapon and load, reading it directly, the weapon and load involved did not cause the head to burst. Relatively little blood was present at the scene around Mr. Cobain's body. So obviously his letter says that he read it, and he's completely confident in this incredibly bizarre description of a shotgun suicide, an intraoral shotgun suicide wound to the head, and yet when he's getting into his limo, which is an SUV and not a stretch, by the way, but it was chauffeured by presumably a member of his campaign staff, when he's getting into that limo, his last words as he dashes off to become governor are, I haven't seen her letter, directly contradicting what I had in my hands, in which he explains that it's having read her letter, her plural actually, both of her letters, that this makes him completely confident. See? So to call that convoluted logic is being too kind. It's just outright lying in the worst possible way. Not only is it extremely duplicitous, but it's incredibly stupid. It's basically lying despite having signed materials attesting to precisely the opposite position. I have read her materials. No, I haven't read her materials. I haven't read her letter. My eyes never set upon those materials in print, because I know how volatile they could be to my career. Anyway, Clark is going in there to defend the OPA, so I'll get a bit of that. The last Gary Locke thing was only a few days ago. It was July 4th. Today's July 9th. Courtney's birthday. 40th, by the way. And she's, I think, having a hearing in LA. on drugs charges.
It is often invisible. Individuals have no idea because it's a one-to-one transaction usually that a landlord or property manager may have tilted the playing field against them in short and
But I don't believe there's any documented case of someone having say, a heart attack as a result of the voltages are just too low and the pathways are too precise.
Have you yourself been subjected to a taser?
Twice.
Have you?
Yes. Yeah. Not fun. But interestingly, after that incapacitation, recovery is fairly instantaneous.
So you got to be mindful of that too.
Absolutely. So you have basically 5 seconds
Yeah.
as an officer to attempt, and this is in the dark mode.
Does that explain the multiple discharge incidents?
Yes.
Yeah, and is that fairly commonly needed?
It represents a fair percentage
Yeah.
of the dark.
That's been one of the complaints as well, hasn't it?
Well, certainly, and we've seen so many circumstances that the discharge 5-second cycle, and then the individual immediately starts to get up. Well, they're still connected, as it were, and a second discharge is then applied just by depressing the trigger. Once again, it goes into 5-second cycle. Okay.
Oh, hi, Mr. Kimmerer. How are you today?
Mr. Kimmerer, Deputy Chief Kimmerer. I'll
Deputy
answer
Chief Kimmerer.
one question, Richard. One question. Have at it. I got to run, though, so.
You're the Chief Operations Officer of the
The
Seattle
Chief of
Police
Operations,
Department.
yes.
This has come up as a significant issue in the Kurt Cobain case in recent months with my dealing with the OPA, and that is Section 1.009 of the Seattle Police Department Policy and Procedures Manual. Are you familiar with this section, sir?
The citation doesn't leap to mind, but hurry up with the question, Richard.
Okay. Well, it seems to be, in a lot of ways, the central governing principle of police work in Seattle, so I would have thought that you'd be more familiar with it. In any case,
I
it
would
reads-
disagree. The central governing police principle is the mission statement of the police department.
Well, I've seen that too. And it reads this way, Deputy Chief Kimmerer. As it is not feasible to expend equal time and energy in the investigation of all reported crimes, priority of investigation and allocation of resources must be based on the relative seriousness of each reported crime. However, reported crimes will be investigated, all reported crimes will be investigated to the fullest extent possible. Now, I have in recent months reported that Seattle Police Department officials and King County Medical Examiner officials engaged in a cover-up, actively engaged in covering up the murder of Kurt Cobain and related crimes, including body mutilation and grave robbing, both of which are very specifically detailed in a videotape of the crime that's held by the widow. And yet, this case was brushed off by the OPA, the Office of Professional Accountability, as a contact log case. Contact log meaning that no investigation was ever initiated, no witness was
Is there
ever
a question coming here,
contacted.
Richard? People do ask questions that are of kind of greater brevity, so.
Doesn't 1.009 of the Seattle Police Department manual, which specifies that investigations have to be allocated, resources for investigations are allocated based on severity of the allegation, conflict with what is actually going on at OPA in this case?
I don't know what that means. Look, the Cobain case has been thoroughly investigated. Reasonable people.
Well, it was not investigated at all.
Are you going to let me answer? Are you going to let me answer the question?
Or
Richard?
are you talking about the 1994 case, or the new evidence that
Richard,
came to light last
Are
year?
you going to let me answer the question?
Are you familiar with the evidence from last year?
Are you going to let me answer the question? This has been thoroughly investigated as a matter appropriate for what has been referred to the department. People don't agree with your theory, and there is substantial evidence that lead them to that conclusion. So
Well, I have no
I'm
idea
sorry
what
that
that substantial evidence is.
I'm sorry that people disagree with you, Richard, but there is a body of evidence that says very clearly that your idea about all of this is wrong.
But how can you have in an office
That
of
was your question.
investigative
That was your question.
internal
I've gotta run.
investigations that in fact does not do an investigation?
I've got to run.
Isn't it true that you do no investigation in 2/3 of all cases? Isn't that true?
Absolutely know what that is.
2/3 of all cases are contact log cases, correct?
Richard, you probably should get back to the busy activity of interviewing yourself.
But that
I've
is true,
answered your
sir,
question.
isn't it? You brush off 2/3 of all cases with no investigation whatsoever, including an allegation of murder, participation in a murder by the Seattle Police Department. No investigation, Mr. Kimmerer. Deputy Chief Kimmerer.
So I'm going to use the restroom.
Okay, I'll talk to you
Yeah,
later.
real
Okay,
quickly,
thanks,
Ms.
Peter.
Halka, can I just
No,
ask?
sure, I'm busy.
Okay, well, maybe you can formulate a response on the 1.009 question. Back door and into the ladies' room. There's a strategy for you. Oh, say, Ms. Palka. Say, Ms. Palka, a lot of people are going to be perplexed by your... I say a lot of people are going to be perplexed by your statement about, you know, you may be right and we may all be wrong, mistakes will be made. Is there any clarification that you'd want to add to that?
No.
Because frankly, the way it sounds is, I mean, if you had someone building on your home and they said, oh, well, you know, mistakes will be made. We may be right, you may be all right, and we may be all wrong. You know, I think that the reaction would be that someone's doing a slipshod job. You may be right and we may all be wrong. Mistakes will be made. Is there any clarification you'd want to add to that?
No? Bye-bye.
Yeah, we jaywalked the hell out of that one.
Change orders because we'll have changed conditions potentially. But you can, with the GCCM, it's easier to do.
Peter, I wanted to say, I wanted to read your originally on your schedule, and I wanted to thank you.
So this appears to be the door that Councilmember Licata used. Councilmember Licata, with no sense of winding down the meeting whatsoever, said, and with that, this concludes our meeting. And I grabbed my camera and walked in his direction, and, you know, within 5 seconds, he was behind the arras in Scrim City, and apparently using this hallway that they've designated as very specifically no public access. They must have known we were coming. You're Councilmember Licata's assistant legislative aide for police matters, is that correct?
You know it to be the truth.
No?
You know that.
Oh, I was just wondering, you were a person I spoke to on the phone who was rather adamant that Councilmember Licata had really no obligation to read the materials that I provided to him. You were sort of against the whole reading thing? Do you recall that conversation? Yeah. It was painfully obvious to me all along that the early indications in speaking to Licata's office back in March were going to prove to be definitive. And that is, oh, it looks like I got his escape on the DV cam here. His position was going to be defined by what was coming forward in the first contacts I had with his staff, which were, believe me, It's Seattle city government, and they want most people to perceive of it as being very touchy-feely and friendly. But from the very outset, Ms. Herbold, Big Red there, was anything but comfy, cozy, Seattle friendly. She was very off-putting, especially on one point that came up over and over again in our conversation, which did drag on a bit, which is that Councilmember Licata is under no obligation to read the materials that you provided to him. And I even brought this up in one of the previous meetings, Councilmember Licata, my impression is that it's the reading bit that is going to be definitive here, because Ms. Licata was very keen on the idea that she's not obligated to even instruct you about the paramount importance of reading the materials that we've provided, that Mr. Lee has provided. Are you getting the picture here? Ken Lay was taken into custody yesterday, Kenny Boy, George Bush's close friend. But one of the few financial scandals that came up prior to the whole Enron thing collapsing that you can stick to Bush was the Funeral Gate scandal that had to do with this SCI corporation. And we touched on this a bit. We never got really thoroughly into all of the details concerning SCI and George Bush, and how really strange it is that the corporation that employs the people who are involved in, that is to say the private corporation that employs these people who were involved in the Cobain mutilation and body parts theft, that they're such close friends of GWB and his daddy too, So, just briefly, the one thing that really stuck to George Bush was Funeral Gate in Texas. Of all the things that you can hang on George W. Bush in his tenure as governor of the great state of Texas, people often think of how many people he sent to the death chamber, and that's sort of definitive. But for those who are interested in financial scandals, the one that came up long before Enron, while he was still in office, was squashing the investigation into the activities of SCI, the nation's largest funerary services chain. And basically what Bush did was he squashed this investigation and then basically directly lied and said, I didn't have that meeting, I never said anything, I didn't interact with those people, I'm just totally ignorant about the facts. And the facts were that he sort of stuck his head into a meeting that he knew was of great moment and said to the corporate principals, hey, I hope they're able to get off your back. I think I've covered the words specifically early last year in front of the Blight's funeral home. But you get the idea is that it's just deniability. They're not striving for any degree of credibility. No one sees that as being anything that they can possibly hope to attain any degree of credibility. Really all they want is deniability. And when you see member Licata hit the bricks and not send me, how many times? I would say at least 3 or 4 times in these hearings, he has said, we will contact you, we will let you know, we will mail something to you, essentially, when this has been looked at or resolved or whatever. And has there been anything put in the mail? No, not unless they put it in the mail today or later today, but as of today, nothing on paper. But we do have our notes on paper, and those are these. Licata says, we did have the meeting. This is precisely what he said earlier today, the sorts of words that he apparently will not commit to paper. We did have the meeting. I did bring up your concerns regarding the Kurt Cobain incident. And I interrupted at that point and said, you mean the death investigation or non-investigation? The police chief's position is that that case has now been closed. Now been closed? It was never opened. There is no case. There was no investigation. So is he talking about 1994 or is he talking about 2003? The corruption investigation, which should have occurred. Back to Locke. They appreciate the volume of information he provided, and the police chief and I both looked at it. Now I'm quoting directly. Looked at it is definitely the position that they decided to take on this. Looked at it. They appreciate the volume of information he provided, and the police chief and I both looked at it. I'm not an attorney. He was impressed, but there was still no evidence there to open up the case. If you have a complaint regarding the actions, the actual conduct of Seattle Police, blah, 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 take it to the OPA. The OPA, and I had to interrupt and say, you must be kidding. You know? I mean, in case there's any misunderstanding, we just chased Miss Palka across the street again, and we asked her as nicely as we could, you know, isn't there something you'd like to clarify about Mr. Lee, you may be right and we may all be wrong, mistakes will be made. Isn't there something about that you'd like to clarify? No clarification forthcoming, as you saw. Or at least as I hope you saw. I hope the camera was in the capture mode. In any case, the other big event that occurred only days ago was this one here. And if you haven't seen this, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Oh, in fact, we have it on video, and it's nice and quiet, so we'll probably conclude by giving it to you on video and then pick up again soon with you on this important matter.
I'm sorry, what? Well, that was strange. Does he do that often? Oh, phone calls here. Every year they do a better and better ceremony. Well, thank you. Oh, I don't know. Well, thank you. Thank you. But it's just great that Jim McDermott and I have been doing this for the last 15 years straight. Yeah, that's wonderful. And Judge Beezer's been doing this for the last 10 years as well. Yeah. Anyway. That's good. All right. Good. All right. Hey, it's good to see you. Thank you. I really don't have time, so okay, well, it only took a minute for... This is concerning the Cobain homicide case, which occurred when you were the King County executive in 1994.
Which Charlie? We're down here.
All right. I just asked you to look at the document.
I really don't have my glasses on with me right now, so I can't see it. So,
thank you for your letter of September 18th, 1995, and a second copy of your report on the death of Kurt Cobain. I have reviewed your written materials as well as Sharon Stewart Johnson's correspondence, which you dated January 17th, 1995.
You'll have to really talk to the police department about that. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
I have been informed that Dr. Harris' article on shotgun wounds has been accepted for publication so why don't you roll your window down? You have just a moment to answer the question. I've been informed that Dr. Richard Hare's article on shotgun wounds has been accepted for publication, and one will be made available to you. I've been informed that Dr. Richard Hare's article on shotgun wounds has been accepted for publication, but has not yet been released.
So that's that Fernando shithead. He's been absent all day as far as I know. Although now he's wearing this tactical ball cap. Try to disguise his identity. He walks by me. What's up, Richie? So he's resorted to wearing identity obscuring headgear. Not too surprised about that. But at least they didn't show up with the full court press ready to taser me here. Yeah, Licata and Kimmerer went through like a 30-minute thing there on tasering. They promised it was going to be very brief. And then they went on and on about tasers. And of course the real kicker was when Clark kind of laughed and said, oh, and you know, there's quite a fast recovery time on those tasers, you know, within 5 seconds. Within 5 seconds. You know, a person recovers from being tasered, I doubt that. But, you know, what it means is they can taser you every 5 seconds for as long as they desire. Anyway, I'm going to check the tape. For the purposes particularly of the Palka business, and that is looking fine and dandy. No problemo there. And that's good. So, yes, we've got Ms. Palka once again finding nothing to equivocate about in her uttering that, you know, her uttering that the statement she made previously was A-OK. Did you catch that? I don't think I caught the bit where he says meeting over on audio. But you can see Nick taking off out the back door, like, you know, a bandito. There he goes. He's gone. Meeting over, ba-boom, gone. So we'll have to pair that with the meeting that's the tape of the meeting that's available through Channel 29. See if it we've got to get him saying meeting over, but he was gone in less than 5 seconds. Gotcha. Oh, hey man, what did you just say?
I watch your show almost every week. Sometimes I have to get up early, but I don't get to catch it. But most of the time I watch it. Very, very interesting. I like your ideas about what happened there. I really think it's true.
So what is true?
That Courtney Love, it's a conspiracy against Kurt Cobain to take him out. I think it's all for money.
It's her 40th birthday today.
It is? Oh, no. I heard she's didn't show up for a court date, and they're gonna go after her.
Was that today?
Yeah, I heard it on the news.
Ah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She says peanuts, so they put I can't remember what it's called.
Warrant?
Yeah, like
a warrant.
It's not a warrant, but it's like that.
Yeah. I was gonna go down there and for her big birthday to see her go on trial, but I figured, it's too good. She'll screw me out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Sure enough, she didn't show up.
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
What's your first name?
Robert.
What town do you live in?
Seattle, West Seattle.
Oh, okay. What's your age?
51, actually. I'm an old fart.
Okay, thanks a lot, man.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Licata. It's now mid-July, and I've been addressing concerns to you in writing and in these sessions for the last 5 months on the subject of the scandal, particularly the details that have emerged in the last year surrounding official corruption in the Seattle Police Department and other government agencies in the death of Kurt Cobain. And to date, what I've heard from you and your staff is that we are taking a meeting with Seattle Police Department Chief Gil Kurlikowski soon. It's usually phrased as next week. So when do you think that meeting might be occurring?
Richard, we did have the meeting. I did bring up your concerns regarding the Kurt Cobain incident and
death investigation or
yes,
non-investigation.
And the police chief's position is that that case has now been closed. I appreciate the volume of information you've produced, and the police chief and I both looked at it. I'm not an attorney. He was impressed, but there is still no evidence there to open up the case. If you have a complaint regarding the actual conduct of the police, then I would recommend that you can file a complaint with the Office of Professional Accountability.
You must be kidding. I mean, haven't you heard any of what I've said to you the last several months? The Office of Professional Accountability is oblivious to this matter because their conduct in this case has been disgraceful. And as far as you're coming here and saying that the police chief has reviewed these materials, or did you use the phrase looked at the materials? Well, that's the first I've heard of this, because up until 1 minute ago, there's been a blanket layer of deniability that Chief Kurlikowski has ever looked at any of those materials. And now you're deferring to him as the ultimate authority on these materials. I'm not particularly confident that what you just said really signifies the police chief looking at the evidence in this case that demonstrates that there needs to be a legitimate homicide investigation and an inquest into this case. What level of confidence do you have that he actually read these materials?
Well, Richard, I appreciate you speaking here this morning. Your time is up. And if you do want to pursue this, your courses of action are either to work through the city.
But sir, could you answer the question? What
degree
degree of confidence do you actually have that this ultimate authority to whom you're deferring all of the responsibility has actually even read the material? Because I'm telling you, up until a couple of minutes ago, there was a complete denial that he had ever seen these materials.
Well, all I can say is that I've been told by the police chief that this case is closed, and
Did he tell you that he read the materials?
I do know he looked at them, and that's all I know.
Looked at, sir.
But thank you very much
Looked
for
at.
coming this morning and
It's the afternoon,
expressing
Mr.
your
Licata.
concern about this situation. We will have to move on to the next speaker.
When this occurred in 1999, when the original Cameron Davis scandal occurred, there were open hearings in Seattle City Council where the police chief came to the city council and was videotaped being questioned by council members on the Cameron Davis scandal. Now, this is a second Cameron Davis scandal and even a bigger one. And, you delayed this for 5 months, and now you're saying, well, I had some kind of a conversation in which he conveyed some kind of vague information for me, case closed.
Thank you. We should, the next person, please.
What is the likelihood of having open
approach the
hearings?
mic. Thank you.
None at all. That's what I'm hearing.
NYP.
That tonight, unraveling the mystery of a high school boy who died of meningitis, and a really bad 40th birthday today for Courtney Love. Next. A lot of people dread turning 40. Not many of those birthdays turn out quite as bad as Courtney Love's 40th birthday did today. First, Love failed to appear in a Los Angeles courtroom on an assault charge, so now there's a bench warrant for her arrest, and she'll lose her $55,000 bail. Now we find out Love's hospitalized in New York. This is her being taken away in an ambulance today. No one knows exactly what's up. All her attorney is saying is that it has to do with a gynecological medical condition.